I kind of know what I want. And when something is not right, I will figure out how to make that change.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a free resource for women who work in the sports and entertainment industry. Each week, we get real and talk about the things that hold us back and how we can overcome them and keep climbing to the top. And the top is however you define it. We talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Consider this podcast your secret weapon. You will learn from the best in the business and be able to take immediate action with all the advice that you hear. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, a leadership development coach and consultant. I've worked in sports for 20 years. 15 of those years were spent working for the Red Sox, Dodgers, and the Cubs. After 15 years of working in the front office, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business. Friends, as a Black woman in sports, I know that the industry can take a toll on your confidence and sometimes leave you feeling defeated. Join me each week so I can support you on your journey. I promise you, each week you will feel stronger and more confident than the week before. So let's get started with this week's episode. Listen to these credentials. Director of Partnership Marketing for the Chicago Bulls, promoted to director after a year and 3 months, elected president of WISE Chicago chapter in 2020. Currently serves as the WISE Chicago Board Chairwoman, master's degree in sports administration, and mother of 2. I'm sure the list goes on. Now, would you believe me if I told you this person shakes when they get nervous? It is wild how our body reacts to our emotions. What's even wilder is when we have the courage to feel the emotions, embrace how our body reacts to them, and to keep moving forward and owning our careers. That's exactly what our next guest has done. Jamie Litoff is the Director of Partnership Marketing for the Chicago Bulls and opens up about how nervousness impacts her, along with how she manages a high-achieving team and how she has navigated her career as she entered a new chapter, motherhood. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. Jamie, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. I have been listening to Game of Her Own, I want to say for maybe since it started, at least over a year. So I'm just so honored to be invited to talk to you.
Hey, well, thanks for listening. All right. Well, you know the drill then. I want you to, before we get into your career, take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
Oh, man. I think I first fell in love with sports in... God, it would be so easy to say the 90s Bulls, but I think like my true passion for working in sports and all of that started at, I went to University of Michigan for college, and I actually started at Syracuse University and transferred to Michigan. And I think I transferred there because Syracuse didn't have like the traditional football college culture that I was looking for. And I went to Michigan and they had all of that. And I think even beyond just like going to the games on Saturdays, I love to talk about it, to talk about college football. The Bears were good at that time, to talk about the Bears. And I think that's just when I really found like my passion, not just for watching it as a fan, but like all different aspects of it, from on the field to off the field as well.
Wow. You transferred after a year or 2 years?
1 year, but I knew that I wanted to transfer right away. So I'm not very good at like enduring. So if I know that I want to change something or this isn't right, like I'm going to change it almost immediately. So yeah, I was at Syracuse freshman year. It's a great place. I made some friends, but it was not the right school for me.
Wow. I like that. Like, you're like, I don't know. There's no need to like endure all this. Like, let's make the change. I can tell in my gut it's not for me.
Yeah.
That's huge, because I feel like a lot of us, especially people who work in sports, will just kind of like, well, I need to stick this out. Did that like carry over into your career?
I've had a few jobs. I've had some for multiple years. I had one role that I was only in for 9 months, that similar situation. I knew right away the culture wasn't for me, the team wasn't for me, and I made a move. So this goes as far as like, I don't like the apartment I'm in, I don't like the dorm that I lived in. Like, I kind of know what I want, and when something is not right, and I will figure out how to make that change.
Wow. Like, where does that come from?
I don't know. The lack of focus or something like that. But no, I think it's been more beneficial and positive for me, because I think that I've just always been really focused and passionate about finding your fit and finding the right fit. And then also like it's translated in my career and helping other people do that.
Why don't you tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for?
Yeah, I am the director of partnership marketing for the Chicago Bulls. Yeah, I lead a team of 6 people that bring all of our partnerships to life. So we're very focused on what is on our contracts, on the paper, what assets we have to get up and running and done. But then how do we transition those not just into contractual assets to signage to really beneficial marketing campaigns for our partners, but also partnerships for the Bulls that help us get to where we want to go.
How long have you been with the Bulls?
This is my second season, so coming up on 2 years.
I asked that question. It's so weird to ask because I know the answer to it. And I was like trying to play like cool, like interviewer, but I totally know the answer to it. But so this is your second season.
This is my second season. Yeah, lifetime fan, but this is my second season with the Bulls, and on the team side in general. Wow. So I've got a background, let's say I started in media, agency, brand, and then back to agency, and then moved over to the team side when property side was always, I think, where I wanted to be in my career.
So you knew that you always wanted to be on the team side or the property side, meaning like you wanted to work directly for a team.
Yeah, I've always been in brand partnerships, but I started at CBS Sports doing digital sponsorship, sales, and account management. And I really like just working on that property side. It's kind of selling an audience and creating partnerships and campaigns from that angle. Tried a couple different things. Didn't really want to be on like the direct side, the direct sales side. At CBS Sports, which we were a satellite office. So that would have been my next role. So made a couple moves, but then always kind of really missed the property side of it. Team side was always a dream. I thought that window, was closing for me. I think, teams are typically hiring at the entry levels and then people are moving up from there. So I thought I would end up back at more like a CBS Sports at a media property doing partnerships. But this role at the Bulls opened up and I got connected to it through somebody with WISE, Women in Sports and Events, who's also a big partner of the Bulls, got connected to my boss, and it has all worked out from there.
Say more about that. So you thought that window was closing, like teams only hire at entry level. Dig deeper. You wanted to stay in Chicago, right?
I did want to stay in Chicago, yeah.
So that limited what teams you could basically like work for, right? Like it narrows it down to a very small pool. So you kind of thought like your window was closing, right? Like it's almost like you were waiting for like this perfect storm to happen, like higher level in partnerships for a team, like a major team, right? So you're thinking like baseball. Would you work in baseball?
Yeah, I would.
Baseball, okay. Football and basketball, maybe some soccer.
Pretty open, actually. Like I'm always interested in learning things that I don't know. Like I worked on the agency side in soccer, and that was really exciting to me because I didn't really know anything about soccer. I was not a huge soccer fan. So I worked on Audi's partnerships with Major League Soccer, and I hadn't been to an MLS game. So that's always just been intriguing to me to learn about something I didn't know. So I was really open, but absolutely like the Bulls were my dream organization and my dream job. The way the season works, the way the NBA is, how innovative they are in partnerships and other areas. So I say it all the time. I got my dream job.
Were you nervous when that opportunity came about, knowing that was like almost like a once in a lifetime, like everything aligned sort of thing?
Yeah, I was terrified when I was interviewing because I was like, if I don't get this, then then the window is closed,
Yeah. How did you handle those nerves?
I think a lot of preparation, honestly. I listened to Game of Our Own podcast with 2 other women, Jackie and Megan, who you've had on here before. And just a lot of preparation and just knowing this was the right role for me. And just if someone sees confidence in you, see it in yourself. So living by that mantra, that's kind of how I calm the nerves.
Yeah, I always say the preparation is the biggest thing. I think sometimes the nerves, like people feel like they shouldn't have them, right? Like I'm less than, or this is making me like, I don't deserve this role because I'm so nervous about the interview process, or I'm so nervous about like my first day or first 90 days, right? Like, so maybe I'm not good enough. Like it's so easy to get caught up in that and stay in that sort of negative self-doubt place.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of live off the nerves and stress. My husband's an attorney. He's a litigator. So he goes in front of judges, trials and things like that. And I was telling him once that like I always shake. Like I shake even if I'm not nervous. People are looking at me and I'm public speaking, like I'm shaking. And he was like, as somebody told him, I think early in his career, if you don't shake, it means you don't care. So I live off that. And so if you're not nervous, then maybe it's because it's not the right thing for you.
Say more about this. So you shake, like you get nervous, like people, can I like visibly, I've seen you public speaking and I don't think you're nervous and I don't see you
Good.
shaking. So like it appears like I don't see that. So are you visibly shaking?
I don't know if you're holding a paper, like your hand shake, things like that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a nervous system reaction for me, but
Yeah.
kind of leaned into it more than the other way.
I love that you just leaned into it. You're like, all right, well, it is what it is. That's how I take it, right? Yeah, like I get nervous. Like I'm gonna wear black because I sweat a ton. Like so, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, or I'm gonna wear like that's why I'm like the queen of sleeveless, even in like the dead of winter. I turn up the heat in my house if I'm doing like a virtual like workshop and like I'm wearing nothing but, well, that sounded really horrible, but I'm wearing like sleeveless and I'm like, cause I'm sweating to death. But I used to think that was bad, that I was nervous, and I'd be so disappointed. Like, look at all these other people and they speak, and it's the trap of comparing yourself to others. But like they get up there and they're not nervous. And then the more people I asked, I'm like, oh, everyone's nervous. It's so normal. And like, it's a good feeling. And I like what your husband said as well. If you're not nervous, you don't care. My mom used to say, like, you're just excited. It's fine. Just kind of turn it. So what was it like? Like, tell us, like, what was it like when you like got that call? Like, what were you feeling?
Oh my gosh, I was so excited, but it was such a challenging time. It was COVID. It was May of 2021. So it was like, are we still in COVID? Our board's going to come back with fans. I interviewed with a ton of people at the Bulls. And again, I told you, like, if I didn't get this, I'm like, this was it. If I don't get this job, what's going to happen? So I was thrilled when I got the call. I also had just found out I was pregnant. And I was like, well, I'm just going to tell them now. I already got the offer, so they can't take it away. So on the phone with my manager and the head of HR, and I was like, I'm so excited, but also like, just want to share with you that I just found out I was pregnant. So wanting to know the maternity policy, gonna have to take a leave at some point soon. It was super early. I hadn't even told my mom, but now I told a head of HR at the Bulls. And at that moment, my boss also shared that she was pregnant too. So she made it super comfortable for me and just felt like this was the right situation in the right place and that it was all going to be okay.
Wow. I just think back like 20 years ago, and like if we were this, same age as we are now, 20 years ago. But like, could you imagine saying like, oh, shoot, I'm pregnant? Like, I don't know. Like, it's so crazy to think 20 years ago was so different. But like, people get nervous about that thing. Like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And I guess I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but were you nervous? Obviously, you were happy and blessed. And you know what I mean? Like, you have this gift. And then you're like, oh, I have to tell my new employer who just gave me a job offer. Like, did you get in your own head about that?
Oh, for sure. I definitely was nervous, was definitely in my head, but it's sort of like there's never a right time. I've certainly felt that with having kids, switching jobs, like there's never a right time. So either like do it now or regret it later. So, I mean, I was pregnant, so I felt like I didn't have a choice, but it was also just a testament to like women in leadership at the Bulls and just in sports in general. I don't feel like it is necessarily the male dominated environment that it was 20 years ago, like you're talking about. So to be on the phone with two women, both in leadership that I was sharing that news with, probably wouldn't have been the situation 20 years ago. So I think it was just more of a testament to the way the industry is changing as well.
Yeah. And I love that story. And I don't think I knew that. I love that you were like, oh, I'm pregnant. All right, like I have a job offer, my dream job, and I'm going to let them know. And then I love that your boss was also pregnant. Like what a sweet moment talking to each other about that.
Yeah, it really was. And then to have her, to have us both be pregnant at the same time and be kind of like on this journey together and asking questions, and just, you don't even always find many moms in sports. So just to be able to have her and still have her today to talk about things like that and comfortable in this mom life of toddlers in sports.
Yeah. And was it your first?
Second. When I was pregnant with my first, I switched jobs when I was 8 months pregnant. So switching jobs when you're pregnant, maybe that's a passionate.
Okay, if you get pregnant again, I'm gonna like text you and be like, all right, what life change are you making? Because it seems to be a theme here.
Not getting pregnant again.
So you 8 months pregnant and you changed jobs. So you interviewed, and it was no secret that you were
definitely no secret. So that was an interesting time, but I was at a role again. Like I was really, really unhappy. And I had a meeting with former boss of mine from the agency, and he was looking to see, I was on the brand side, if we wanted agency services. And I was like, no, but I'm really unhappy at my job. And he had a director role on the agency side. That's where I was working in soccer on Audi, and offered that to me, or offered me to start interviewing for that. So just again, like back to networking and connections, and the value of that has helped me find my fit. But yeah, I was 8 months pregnant, started a job, 8 months pregnant, and then took a leave. So, I mean, a hard time to come into a leadership role and have a team and try to make an impact in 1 month, and then go out for 3 months and then come back. It was some challenging things to navigate, but I think it helped me develop leadership skills for sure.
I think we're all so guilty of like me. I know that I am. I'm guilty of like making up a story in our head. Well, I'm not happy where things are, but I'm 8 months pregnant, so there's nothing I can do. I just have to wait because no one's going to want to hire me. Did you ever make those stories up in your head?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had many scenarios of like, okay, well, I'll look for a new role when I'm on leave or something like that, or I just won't come back. But then if I don't come back from leave, then it'll be so hard to find a new job. So yeah, I made up a lot of those stories. I think it was just the ability to have somebody that I trusted and meet with him and be able to share the situation I was in, and have that relationship and be comfortable to do that. But yes, had a lot of apprehension there too.
Yeah, it sounds like the key for you was just having a trusted colleague, trusted advisor, somebody that you could just open up and talk to, but in the industry. So, well, I'm sure you talk to your family and your husband, right? Or like your friends, but talking to somebody who really like knows you and can just say, no, what are you talking about? Like just kind of like knock you out of it. And they have that credibility of being in the industry. So that helps you.
Yeah, I think for sure. Someone that knows the industry, it's really easy to have somebody in your family or friends be like, well, just leave your job. You'll find something else, or just take your leave or something like that. But knowing the industry, knowing how it works, and being able to then advocate for you. Like he was then a sponsor that went to somebody in his team and said, I advocate for you, and speaking my name in rooms that I wasn't in. So definitely being able to have those connections and just trust, not even just connections, really authentic connections, friendships, trusted relationships in the industry has been very key for me. Helped me find my role at the Bulls, helped me get out of that situation, but then also just someone to work with on any challenges that I'm facing or provide business opportunities.
I'm going to ask this question, and it may not be a big deal. Maybe it's just a big deal in my head because I haven't had children, but starting a new job is difficult. Starting a new job while 8 months pregnant and leading people, which is difficult. But now you add in like the layer of, you're 8 months pregnant. And then you add in like, I'm taking time off. And then you have to adjust not only to a new job, but being a new mom, right? This was your first back, the other job before you got to the Bulls. This was your first. Like, how did you go about figuring out what that balance at work was, and like that work-life balance, or some people say there's no such thing. So harmony, like, how did you figure that out?
A lot of trial and error. I don't know if I've figured it out yet on that balance, but I think it's mostly been a lot of transparency. I shared with my boss at that time when I was coming back what I was nervous about, from anything like I need the room for breast pumping to I'm nervous because I've always worked, like I always put in the time. I think I did really well because I worked really hard and I worked late and I did what I had to do. Well, now I have to leave at 5 because I have to be on the Metro and I have to be home because I don't have childcare after 6. So just being really transparent about what my limitations and boundaries are, but also the things that I'm worried about, and leaning on others to help navigate that.
You just said that and you made it sound so easy.
It was not easy. I shouldn't say it like that. It's very hard. And it was a lot of just saying, like, talking myself up and saying, I have to go in here and I have to go and tell my boss what I'm nervous about. And maybe he won't relate, but I shared it. And I think when you say those things out loud to people, it helps you set the boundaries. Like I told him that I have to leave at 5 and maybe I'll be on later. Maybe I won't. Like I'm navigating this. So it even helps then when you have that guilt and you have that worry that like you did speak that into existence. You did share those frustrations with someone or some of those limitations and boundaries that you have.
Yeah. Setting those boundaries it's huge. And then also holding them. It's funny. Like sometimes we're our own, like we break our own boundaries, right? Like we set them and then we're just like, well, I'm going to do this differently, because holding them is really, really difficult. It's really hard to do. Once you set them, it's hard.
For sure. And I think boundaries, they can mean different things. Like I'm sitting here like, I have to leave at 5. I have to leave at 5. which I do have to leave at 5, but that doesn't mean that I'm not sometimes working up until midnight, not because I'm breaking those boundaries, but because that's what works for me and when I can get work done. So it's more just about what those boundaries mean to you and what I think that you're comfortable with. Like, I feel like some people are seeing late night emails or any late night work and thinking like, oh, this person has no work-life balance or anything like that. And I think work-life balance is solely defined on what that means to you. Like, to me, sometimes it means flexibility. It means being able to take my son to school if I need to, or leave for a doctor's appointment, or not have to call anyone to let them know I'm going to be working 10 to 6 today, instead of 9 to 5. So I think to me, work-life balance just means flexibility to take care of what you need to do and work in the way it works for you. It doesn't necessarily mean a number of hours or a specific work schedule or at Friday afternoons off or work from home.
Some of the toughest conversations we have are the ones that we have with ourselves. We can convince ourselves to believe stories that we don't even know are true. What's crazy is we allow that story to take a toll on our confidence. Have you been there before? I know that I have. We get in our heads. We beat ourselves up. Here's some tough love. Nobody's got time for that. We are high achieving women who have big career goals. We don't have time to get in our own way. And I am here to support you with my new one-on-one coaching program, Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. My clients have told me that when we work together, I've helped them get out of their own way, regain their confidence, learn how to manage their emotion and mindset. They've told me that they've been able to get their voice back and use it with confidence. The most important thing, they've told me that we've identified the obstacle that was getting in their way. If you want to learn more about this program, scroll down in the show notes, click on the link that says Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. You can set up time to chat with me and we can figure out if this is the right program for what you need. All right, let's get back to the episode. How does that translate to your team? Like, how do you, and you're managing a team of 6 right now, you said, and you managed a team in previous roles, because not everyone chooses to have children or they're not at that place in their life right now. But there's other things where they're just like, no, I want to leave at 5 because I got to play softball, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I have to do something.
The workday ends at 5. Everyone's like, it's okay to leave at 5.
Yeah, you guys can't see my face right now, but I'm like, yeah, like it's right. That's like normal, but it's easier for me now that I'm not working for an organization for me to be like, the workday ends at 5. But then you go back and you think about when you first start or when you're trying to make get to the next level, which I guess we're always doing in our careers, but you look at 5 differently. Like, you look at it, well, if I stay leader, that reflects really well on me. And I look like I'm putting in extra work and my manager's here late, so I need to be here late. So you set your own boundaries. You knew what, you had transparency, you tested things out, you figured it out, you used your voice, right? To speak up, even if you were nervous, even if you were shaking, you said what you needed, even though it was difficult. How did you encourage your team to do the same, or did you?
Yeah, I always encourage my team to set their own boundaries. I'm not going to set it for them. I'm not going to say everyone has to leave at 5 or everyone has to take this Friday off or make sure you take your birthday off or something like that. Because I feel like if you do that for people, they're never going to do it for themselves. They're always going to wait for someone to tell them, hey, you need to take your vacation. So I just always encourage people to set their own boundaries and take the time they need and determine what that flexibility means for them. And they don't even have to share it with me. Like, I feel like a lot of people will be like, put in a PTO request. I'm off on Friday because I'm driving here or taking my grandma here, which, like, you can take it off just to watch TV all day. That sounds like a dream. So I think just, again, transparency and encouraging people to set their own boundaries and determine what work-life balance looks like for them, whether it's work from home, whether it's a different set of hours, whether it's just taking their PTO, and determining what their boundaries are and flexibility.
I love that. You don't have to tell me where you're going. Like, you take your Friday, it's paid time off. Like, I don't have to validate why you're taking that time off.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's important for managers to understand, like especially new managers. It's your paid time off. Yeah. If you're taking a day off for whatever reason and it's, before opening day or it's opening day or opening night in your case, like, okay, we should talk about that. right? Like that would need a little bit more explanation because you're kind of leaving your team, but usually it doesn't. I'm going to sit and watch Netflix and I'm turning my work phone off. So don't bother me. Like you don't need to tell anybody that.
Absolutely.
Is that difficult as a manager? And like I've worked with some clients who, when it comes to managing people, it's, how do I say this? I feel like sometimes our egos get in the way when we're managing people, or our pride, or our, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, we're human. And like these things happen and like they kind of like you can't avoid them. Like, I don't know. I guess my question for you is like for new managers just starting out, what advice would you give them about sort of managing your ego and managing people?
It's something that I work on as well right now, is just that as a manager and as a leader, you are mostly measured on the success of your team and how well your team is doing. So it is not at all about you taking credit for it. It is more you are viewed as successful if you are hyping up the accomplishments of your team and your team is successful. So I think as women, or I guess I can only really speak for myself, sometimes we really just want to prove our value all the time, take credit, talk about those accomplishments, but it's so much more about the skills you're building and the success of your team that it is a checklist of all the things that you did and the things that you got credit for. So that's something I work on all the time, is just delegating, but then also celebrating that success of my team, because that is how I should be measured as a leader. And so I would just encourage any new manager to think of it that way and think of their team success as their success.
Yeah, I love that. Thinking of your team. It is difficult, right? Like you make a really good point, like taking credit, because we're trying to grow as well. So it's just, but you're also trying to help others grow at the same exact time. And so really where I found all of my joy is when I like just did exactly what you just said, hyped up my team.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm not taking credit. Like it was easier for me to talk about the success of like somebody on my team and what they did and an idea they had and, you know, how I helped them bring it to life. Right. Like that was like, this was all so-and-so and this was all their idea. And I just put some structure around it. And here we go. We have a great program. Or I didn't have to do anything. They did it. They did it all. And like,
right. I think that you didn't have to do anything. They did it all reflects so well on you because you've empowered your team to do it and do it flawlessly.
And being able to talk about that in meetings and what your team is doing. And then your team feels good too. Oh, she's talking about me when I'm not in the room. Because no matter what, even if you're not in the meeting, you always hear when your name comes up, or you hear when your idea came up without your name attached to it, which is, it could be heartbreaking for people.
Yeah, I think the biggest compliment that anyone could give me, if they're like, you have such a good team. Your team's doing so well. We love working with your team.
Yes.
Your success.
I think the most difficult things I dealt with in my career, and I see a lot of my clients dealing with this too, is dealing with somebody who just is so ambitious that they almost like forget what they were hired to do. They think they should be at a different level. Obviously, let's take an example from a different time in your career, not where you are now, but like, what advice would you give to women who are dealing with that? I hear it so often. They're like, I don't know what to do. This person is so ambitious. They keep challenging me. They're not doing the job that I hired them to do.
I think it's about finding the why behind that. Like, why is that? Is it because they're feeling out of control? So they doing the thing that they know how to do really well that isn't what they hired them to do makes them feel in control? Is it because they're burned out on their current role and they need to be doing something different and challenged in a different way? Did they not understand what they were hired to do or what the assignment was? So how can you as a manager really provide clarity and move move obstacles out of the way for them in order to get them on the path to doing what they need to do? So I think it's very easy, and I just all the time to become frustrated with surface level, like they're not doing what they need to do. They're so ambitious. They're over here. They want to be involved in every project but are not focused on like the things that are going to make them grow and really look at what the why is. Because I feel like it usually comes back to either like a lack of clarity on what their role is, or potentially them feeling out of control and leaning back on something else they know how to do because they're stressed out.
That was like a little mini masterclass. That was really well said. And something I like to talk about a lot is just starting with the why. And it's not one size fits all when it comes to managing people, which I'm sure you can attest to, which takes more of your time to find out everyone's why and learn from it and help them steer in the direction that they want to go in. That's a lot for a manager.
Yeah, when I started at the Bulls, I came in as a manager to a team that for the most part had been working together and in their roles for up to, let's say, 8 years, many people in the 4 to 5 range. So I think coming in as a manager to an existing team can be really challenging in that sense because it's not a one size fits all approach. And you need to figure out kind of what makes each person tick, what they're looking for. And while things can appear like very harmonious, I think that everyone is still often experiencing their own challenges, especially for a team that's been together or working together in similar roles for anywhere from like 4 to 8 years. So when I came into the Bulls, I made a point just to listen to each one of my direct reports and what they were really enjoying, what they were doing, and what some of their biggest challenges were, and see what I could do to move those obstacles out of the way. And I think one of the things that I've been able to do here in the last 2 years is restructure the way our account management team works. So we now have 2 managers, and then under them, they each have 2 direct reports. So that's the 6 people that report up into me. I was finding that a lot of people really wanted to manage people. They wanted to move up, but then moving up, they weren't sure exactly what that means. It was a bigger title, it was more money, but where was the change in responsibility? When were they going to get to really be a true manager and also a strategist on the account side as well? So being able to change that structure was just a result of listening to, I think, what people really enjoyed about what they were doing and the areas that they wanted to grow when I came into a new team that had existed for a long time.
Again, this episode is like a masterclass. I think that's great advice. Tell us one last thing before we get to rapid fire questions. So I know you started as a senior manager in partnership marketing, and then a year later, a year and 3 months, according to LinkedIn, you were made a director. So I remember like we were emailing about something and I was like, wait a second, her title has changed. And so like getting a promotion in a year's time at a new job, tell us all about, like, were you hoping that would happen? Was that your goal? Just talk us through it.
I was definitely hoping that would happen, and it was absolutely my goal. I think when I was hired at the senior manager level, I had been an account director at an agency, so I felt like I was at that level, but titles mean a lot of different things at a lot of different places, and I always encourage people not to be beholden to titles. They can mean so many different things, and titles are what you put on LinkedIn. They're not the work you have to do every day. The work you have to do the work every day, so make sure you're really enjoying that and it's helping you build the skills to the places you want to go. So yes, of course, I felt like I should have come in at a director level, but this was the right opportunity for me. It was the right team. It was the right manager. The people you work with, I think, can be almost more important than the work that you do sometimes. But then I was able to come in here and prove myself to my manager to restructure the team, to be a leader of this team, to add value to how we strategize for our partners, how we measure our partnerships, how we ideate for our partners. And in that, focused a lot on what skills I built over the first year versus again, the checking boxes on the different accomplishments. And in doing it that way, I think I was able to advocate for myself and also just have an amazing manager who was a sponsor for me and talked about me in rooms that I wasn't in. And that allowed me to get the promotion to director, which is just a dream job. I could just cry saying that is my title, honestly.
So you came in, you were a director in your previous role, you came in as a senior manager, and we're fine with that because you were just like, titles mean different things at different places. And it sounds like to me, you were super focused in what needed to be done to get to the next level, where you needed to put your energy and growing not only your team and your department, but then also growing yourself. Like, what skills do you need to build and what do you need to do to get to that next level? Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And I started during review season. So obviously I wasn't doing a review for myself, but I did use the opportunity to sit with my boss and say, okay, here are my goals for the year. Or do you think that these are what would get me to the next level? But also, is this going to support our team? And is it going to support you? And we aligned on what those goals were and what the skills I needed were and what the projects I should be focusing on were. And I think having that outlined up front allowed me, when the year was up, to say, okay, we did all these things, or we didn't do this, but we didn't do this because of this reason, and we shifted to focusing on this priority instead. So having a plan and goals up front was really helpful.
What you just said that was so important. You took your manager along for the ride. So here's what I think, this is what I want to focus on. Here are my goals to get to the next level. 1, what do you think? 2, does this help you? does this align with our overall department goals? And does this make sense? Like, is this going to help you also do your job well? And so you invited this person in, you invited your manager in to be a part of the discussion as well.
Absolutely. I try to do that both ways. I try to work with her and say, how can I continue to support you? What can I do to make your job easier or take things off your plate? And I do the same thing with the managers that report to me. What else can I do to support you? What obstacles can I move out of the way? And I do that almost every week when we check in. So just constant communication and going back to the foundational goals and seeing what else we can do to support each other.
What do you do when you can't move an obstacle? I don't know why that just immediately popped in my head, but like, I know that it happens, right? Like there's just sometimes you're like, okay, this is an obstacle and it may take a couple of years before we make this change because it's a systemic issue and we got to go at the root cause of it. So how do you handle that?
A lot of frustration first, but then often it's figuring out like we can't go through it, but how are we going to work around it? Or what's the Band-Aid that we can do in the meantime? So maybe we can't have you own X project right now, but we could have you support something else in a different way in the meantime while we focus on trying to get you leadership over a certain thing. So what are small things that we can do to continue to move along? Because like I'm someone, I have to be moving. I have to be seeing movement. Even slow progress is better than no progress. So just trying to figure out what are the small steps that will help us go around this obstacle if we can't move it or go through it.
Yeah, I think that's great for anyone who's listening that fears asking that question, like what obstacles can I move for you, or talking about that on a weekly basis is a great strategy as a manager. And sometimes people shy away from asking that because they don't think they can always help. Like, what if someone asks me for something I can't give them? And it sounds like to me, you're just like, hey, if I can't give it to you, we're going to figure out something else. Like you said, how do we move around it? I can't move it out of your way, but we can work around this. And it sounds like you are probably transparent in that you can't make that change, like just being super honest with somebody.
Right. And that sometimes it's like, I would love to, but I do not have the visibility to move that. So what can we do to get there in the long term? And now just asking the question allowed me to understand what your long-term goal is. Even if we can't do it right now, potentially we could set timelines to when we will be able to do it, or even just find other ways to get there that aren't maybe necessarily the most direct path.
Yes. All right. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Yeah, I listen to this podcast all the time, and right now I can't even remember what any of them are. So they will be true rapid fire responses.
Yes. All right, good. All right. What is your favorite sports moment?
The first one that pops into my head is the first night game at Michigan. Michigan played Notre Dame, came from behind and won at the last second. I was there with a bunch of friends. It was a blast. There's so many more, and I don't even love college sports, but that's the first one that popped in my head.
That's a good one. What is something people always get wrong about you?
People always think I don't like them. I don't know. I think I've got the face or something. People always think right off the bat, like I don't like them. And I don't know.
That's so funny. I can relate to that.
Right.
For sure. Or I get a lot of you're intimidating. But I didn't even say anything. I'm just sitting over here.
All the time. Oh, I hate to hear that. But then I think, okay, well, what should I change so I'm not like that?
Yeah.
But yes, it's exactly what it is. Intimidating.
What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Pasta. There's nothing better than pasta.
Yeah, there really isn't. Have you been to Caramillo?
No.
You need to go. So anyone who's listening who's in Chicago or might be in Chicago, it is a great little tiny spot, mom and pop shop, BYOB. They don't even have a bar, and like homemade pasta.
Have to go. Yeah.
It's so good.
Better.
Yes. Get a babysitter and date night for sure. You will, and then text me after you go because I want to hear what you think.
Deal.
Are you a morning or a night person?
Oh, I'm nocturnal. I'm such a night person.
It
was like, it's such an unproductive way to live, but it is like, I'll be so tired all day. And then I get to 10 p.m. and I'm like, should I do work? Should I watch TV? Should I stay up all night? I don't know. My next life, I want to be someone who's like on the Peloton at 5:30 a.m., gets up before my kids get up, but that is just not me.
I'm not a night person. Like around 4:00, my brain just is like, and we're done. It's hard. Yeah. I kind of wish I had that energy, but favorite holiday?
Christmas. We have the most like family traditions around it. I'm Jewish too, so I'll just preface with that. Um, we always grew up celebrating, doing presents with my family and have family friends and tradition or family friends that would come over. So that was our tradition. And now my son's 3, and this was the first year. He loved it, helped us with the tree, loves the whole Santa thing and everything. So by far Christmas, but will preface that I'm Jewish.
I try not to laugh while you're talking, but that is amazing. You're like, oh, and I'm Jewish. Like Christmas.
Yeah, no, I'm appropriating other cultures. I'm open about that.
Dog or cat person?
Dog, Beanie. She's my 5-year-old black pit bull. Obsessed with her.
Oh, I love that. What product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Aquaphor.
What's that?
It's like Vaseline. It like comes in the tubs. I don't know. I feel like Aquaphor people know. If you know, you know.
I definitely do not know.
Everything.
Yeah, I'm about to Google that after. What's your favorite app?
Like to know it. So it's like when influencers post their clothes on Instagram, and then you can go and click through to buy it.
Yes.
It's so dangerous, but I don't
so
know.
Dangerous.
You look in and you're like, oh, what is that? Where do I get that? And then you click to get it.
Like all of the time. All of the time. I kind of slowed down during COVID because I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah. And then you just stockpile athleisure clothes.
Yes, exactly. I keep saying, I'm like, oh my God. I'm down here in Georgia for the month and I'm like, I don't have any clothes. All I have is athleisure wear. That is literally my wardrobe. I need to change that up.
I have an entire dresser of sweaters. It's not sweaters, sweatshirts, just sweatshirts.
Yeah, I've actually committed to one sweatshirt because I want it to be like lived-in sweatshirts are the best.
I know.
So I've committed to one. It's my Bears sweatshirt. And I spilled chocolate on it the other day and I was so upset.
The worst. We'll have to get you a Bulls one.
I know. I kind of want a WNBA one.
I have the orange WNBA one. I love it. Definitely get that.
Yeah. I don't know where.
Dresser of sweatshirts.
Yeah. So I can have a podcast about what clothes you want to buy. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, or LinkedIn.
Instagram. That's the one I use most. I probably get the most joy from that, even though I scroll all of them.
Yeah, exactly. I try not to do TikTok. I find it overwhelming. It's just too much. There's too many things.
It's too loud. Like it's just sound on thing. I can't do it.
Yeah, good point. All right. Who's your biggest inspiration in life?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with my mom. She is a just badass lawyer. She worked at a law firm, and then she got hired by her client to go be the lawyer for the Detroit airport. She flew back and forth to Detroit every week. Her name is on the wall at the airport. I don't know. I always had a working mom, and I always wanted to be a working mom. And so I think a lot of who I am as a leader and a worker is because of her.
That was beautiful. As a child, what did you want to become when you grew up?
A lovable. I just write it on all the things. Like, what do you want to be? A lovable. So I think I'm pretty close. This is like the closest I'm going to get, right?
Yes. Yeah. Unless you actually go and try out and.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to ask Michelle on that one, but I think that's the feeling for me.
Last question. Finish the sentence. The future of women working in sports is
incomplete. I think this is the best time to be a woman in sports, but the runway is so big. The ceiling is there is no ceiling.
I like that. That is the first time in 140 episodes that someone has said incomplete. I really like that. Unique answer. Jamie, this has been fantastic. This was so much fun. I'm telling you, this episode was like a mini masterclass in all the things. So tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
You can find me on LinkedIn or jlitoff@bulls.com.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. This was so much fun.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here and to chat with you.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram @Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.